The dirt hitting my coffin lid sounded like thunder in my ears as I pressed my face against the satin lining and tried not to scream. They thought I was dead. My own family thought they were burying sweet little Catherine, who had supposedly died from a mysterious illness that the doctors couldn't explain, but I could feel every grain of soil landing above me, every shovel full sealing me deeper into what was meant to be my eternal prison. The paralysis drug my stepmother Rebecca had been feeding me for months had finally worn off just in time for me to realize the horrible truth about my situation. I was alive and they had buried me alive. My fingers clawed at the coffin lid as panic set in, but then I remembered something my grandfather had whispered to me before he died about the old family burial traditions, about how our ancestors always buried their dead with tools in case the spirits needed to dig their way to the afterlife. My trembling hands found the small iron spade placed by my feet, and I knew this wasn't coincidence. This was preparation. Someone in my family knew I might wake up and they had given me a chance to survive. The air in my coffin was running out fast, but rage burned in my chest hotter than fear as I realized what Rebecca had done to me. She had married my father for his fortune, waited for the perfect moment, then slowly poisoned me with something that mimicked death so she could inherit everything while getting rid of the one person who stood in her way. His only daughter. His heir. Me. If you're watching this and your heart is pounding, hit that like button, because what I had to do next required strength I didn't know I possessed. Using the spade, I began scraping at the coffin lid, knowing I had maybe 10 minutes of air left before I would actually die for real. The wood was old and soft from the moisture in the ground, and piece by piece I carved a hole just big enough for my body. Dirt poured in immediately, threatening to bury me even faster, but I kept digging upward through 6 feet of earth with nothing but a small tool and the burning desire for revenge. My fingernails broke and bled as I clawed my way through mud and roots, feeling worms crawling across my face and into my hair, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. Because Rebecca thought she had won. She thought she was sleeping peacefully in my father's bed, spending my inheritance, planning her new life while I rotted in the ground. But she had made one crucial mistake. She had underestimated how much I loved my father and how far I would go to make her pay for what she had done to both of us. It took me 4 hours to dig my way to the surface, and when my hand finally broke through into the night air, I felt like I was being born again. Reborn for one purpose. Revenge. The groundskeeper found my empty grave at dawn and started screaming so loud that half the town came running to see what looked like a scene from their worst nightmares. My coffin sat open and empty in a hole filled with loose dirt and claw marks that told the story of someone fighting their way out from the inside. But I wasn't there to see their shocked faces, because I was already 3 miles away, hiding in the old barn where my grandfather used to keep his hunting rifles. Looking at myself in a broken mirror, I barely recognized the creature staring back. My burial dress was torn and filthy, my hair was matted with grave dirt, and my eyes had a wild look that belonged more to a wolf than a woman. But I was alive. And more importantly, I was invisible, because everyone believed Catherine was dead and buried. Rebecca had given me the perfect cover for what I was about to do. I spent that first day listening to the town gossip as people tried to make sense of what they had seen at my graveside. Some said animals had dug up my body. Others whispered about grave robbers looking for my jewelry. But Rebecca knew better. I could see it in her face when she came to view the empty grave, her skin pale as moonlight and her hands shaking like leaves in a storm. She knew I was alive, and she knew I was coming for her. That night I watched from the shadows as she paced through my father's house, the house that should have been mine, checking every lock and closing every curtain. She had hired 2 bodyguards and installed a security system, but she couldn't secure her guilty conscience. I waited 3 days, studying her routines, learning her new patterns, understanding exactly how paranoid she had become. Then I started my campaign. The first message was simple. I left my burial dress hanging in her closet where she would find it first thing in the morning. The second was more personal. I placed a photo of my father on her pillow, the same photo she had hidden away after marrying him because she said it made her uncomfortable. The third message made her call the police. I wrote, "I know what you did," in the steam on her bathroom mirror, using my finger, knowing she would see it when she got out of the shower. But when the officers arrived, they found nothing. No evidence of a break-in. No fingerprints. No trace that anyone had been there. Because ghosts don't leave evidence, and as far as everyone knew, Catherine was dead. Comment below if you think Rebecca deserved what was coming to her, because my plan was just getting started. The real psychological torture began when I started using my knowledge of the house against her. I knew every creaking floorboard, every loose window, every secret passage my grandfather had built during Prohibition. I would move through the walls like smoke, making sounds that would wake her in the middle of the night but disappearing before she could find me. I would rearrange small things just enough to make her question her sanity. Her coffee cup moved from the kitchen to the living room. Her jewelry box opened when she was sure she had closed it. Books fell off shelves when she walked by. Every day she grew more desperate, calling priests and psychics and anyone who would listen to her claims that her dead stepdaughter was haunting her. But the beauty of my revenge was that telling people the truth only made her sound more guilty. If Catherine was really dead, why was Rebecca so afraid of her ghost? What did she have to hide? What had she done to make a spirit angry enough to return from the grave? The whispers in town were growing louder, and I knew it was almost time for the final act. 3 weeks after my resurrection, Rebecca finally broke down and confessed everything to Father Martinez, thinking that absolution might protect her from my vengeance. But I was hiding in the confessional booth next to hers, listening to every word as she sobbed about the poison and the inheritance and how she never meant for things to go so far. I just wanted him to love me more than her, she cried, but Catherine was always his favorite, always the perfect daughter, and I knew I could never compete with that. So you decided to kill her, Father Martinez said, and his voice carried the weight of judgment. It wasn't supposed to kill her, just make her sick enough to send away to a hospital somewhere far from here. But then she got worse and worse, and when she finally collapsed, I thought maybe it was a sign. A sign to commit murder. A sign that God wanted me to have what was rightfully mine as his wife, but now she's back and I don't know what she wants from me. I knew exactly what I wanted. I wanted her to feel the terror I had felt clawing my way out of that grave. I wanted her to understand what it meant to be buried alive by someone you trusted. And I wanted my father to know the truth about the woman he had married. That night I made my final move. Rebecca had fired the bodyguards after they found nothing week after week and installed camera systems that showed empty rooms even when she was sure someone was there. She was alone in the house except for my father, who was sleeping off another one of his mysterious illnesses. Illnesses that I now realized weren't mysterious at all. Rebecca was poisoning him too. Just like she had poisoned me. Slowly, carefully keeping him weak and dependent while she gained control of everything he owned. I found him in his bedroom, barely conscious and burning with fever, as Rebecca sat beside him pretending to be the caring wife. "Hello, Rebecca," I said, stepping out of the shadows. "Miss me?" She screamed and fell backward off her chair, scrambling toward the door, but I moved faster than she expected, grabbing her wrist with a grip strengthened by weeks of digging through dirt and stone. "Catherine, you're supposed to be dead," she gasped. "I was supposed to be a lot of things," I replied. "I was supposed to inherit my father's fortune. I was supposed to have a stepmother who loved me. I was supposed to grow old in this house surrounded by family. I can explain everything. You already did in confession 3 hours ago." The color drained from her face as she realized I had heard her admit to everything. "What do you want?" she whispered. "I want you to experience what you put me through. Like this video if you believe in eye for an eye justice, because what happened next was the moment Rebecca learned what real fear felt like. I had prepared everything carefully over the past 3 weeks. The shovel. The coffin I had stolen from the funeral home. The remote location where no one would hear her screaming. But most importantly, the same paralysis drug she had used on me. The same slow-acting poison that would make her appear dead while keeping her conscious enough to feel every moment of what came next. "You're going to bury me alive," she said, and it wasn't a question. "Just like you buried me. Please, Catherine, I'll give you everything, your father's money, the house, all of it. Just please don't do this. Money won't bring back the 3 weeks I spent planning this revenge. Rebecca, money won't erase the memory of digging my way out of my own grave." I injected her with the paralysis drug and watched as her body slowly shut down while her mind remained perfectly alert. Just like mine had been. Just like she had planned for me. "The difference between us, Rebecca, is that I'm going to give you something I never had. What she managed to whisper. A way out. I carried Rebecca's paralyzed body to the old cemetery where my empty grave still waited like an open mouth hungry for its intended meal. She could move her eyes and breathe but nothing else as I placed her in the wooden box I had prepared for this moment. Here's how this works, I told her as I held up a small device. This button connects to an air pump that will keep you breathing underground for exactly 24 hours. Her eyes went wide with terror as she realized what I was offering. 24 hours to think about what you did to me and my father, 24 hours to decide if you want to confess your crimes to the police or die in the ground like you planned for me to do. I showed her the cell phone I was leaving in the coffin with her. If you decide to confess, hit #1 and it will call the police and tell them where to find you, but if you decide to stay silent and hope someone finds you accidentally, well, the air pump stops working after 24 hours. Why she managed to whisper. Because unlike you, I'm not a killer, Rebecca, I'm just someone who believes people should face the consequences of their choices. I sealed her coffin and began shoveling dirt on top just like they had done to me, but this time I was the one in control. This time I was the one deciding who lived and who died. 23 hours and 59 minutes left, I called down to her, choose wisely. Then I walked away, leaving her in the darkness with nothing but her guilt and a decision that would determine whether she saw another sunrise. Subscribe to this channel if you want to know what choice Rebecca made, because what happened next shocked everyone, including me. I went back to my father's house and found him barely clinging to life in his bed, his body ravaged by months of slow poisoning. Catherine, he whispered when he saw me, I thought you were dead. I was supposed to be Dad, but I came back to save you. I called an ambulance and stayed by his side as they pumped his stomach and flushed the toxins from his system. The doctors said another week of Rebecca's poisoning would have killed him. 22 hours passed before my phone rang. It was the police. We received a very strange confession call. The detective said someone claims to be buried alive in Riverside Cemetery and says they murdered Catherine Morrison. That's impossible, I replied. Catherine Morrison is dead. But when they dug up the location Rebecca had given them, they found her unconscious but alive, clutching the phone and surrounded by her own written confession detailing everything she had done to both me and my father. She had chosen to live. She had chosen to tell the truth. And in doing so she had given me something I hadn't expected. Justice. Rebecca survived her night underground, but the experience changed her in ways that no prison sentence could. She confessed to everything on video, including details about the paralysis drug and where she had obtained it and how she had planned to kill my father after I was safely buried. The trial lasted 3 months and became the most sensational case in our town's history. The woman who tried to bury her stepdaughter alive for money. The girl who literally rose from the dead to expose her stepmother's crimes. The media called me the resurrection angel, but I didn't feel angelic. I felt like someone who had been forced to become something dark and terrible in order to survive. Rebecca was sentenced to life in prison without parole, but even that felt incomplete. She would live out her days in a cell while I lived with the memory of clawing my way out of a grave. She would have 3 meals a day and medical care while my father spent months recovering from the poison she had fed him. She would eventually die peacefully in her sleep while I would never sleep peacefully again, knowing how easily someone you trust can try to bury you alive. But there was one moment during the trial that made everything worthwhile. When Rebecca looked directly at me from the witness stand and said, "I'm sorry, Catherine, I never meant for it to go that far." I stood up in that courtroom and replied, "You didn't bury Catherine, Rebecca, you buried an innocent girl who trusted you, but I'm not her anymore. I'm someone who fought her way back from the dead, and that person doesn't forgive." The judge sentenced her that same day. My father recovered completely and changed his will to ensure that no one could ever manipulate him for money again. We moved away from that town and its haunted cemetery, but we couldn't move away from what had happened to us. Some nights I still dream about the dirt hitting my coffin lid. Some mornings I wake up convinced I'm still buried underground fighting for air. And sometimes I wonder if the person who clawed her way out of that grave was really the same Catherine who had been buried in it. Because revenge changes you. It makes you capable of things you never thought possible. It turns you into someone who can bury another human being alive and walk away. Even if you give them a choice, even if you call it justice, even if they deserved every moment of terror you put them through. Comment below if you think Rebecca got what she deserved or if I went too far with my revenge. But remember this story the next time someone close to you starts acting differently. Trust your instincts. Question sudden illnesses. And if someone you love seems to want you gone badly enough, they might be willing to bury you alive to get what they want. Because monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like family. Sometimes they make you coffee in the morning and poison your dinner at night. Sometimes they stand beside your grave crying fake tears while planning how to spend your inheritance. And sometimes the only way to stop them is to become something just as dangerous. Something that refuses to stay buried. Something that digs its way back up through 6 feet of earth with nothing but rage and a rusty spade. I am living proof that some secrets can't stay buried forever. That some injustices demand their own resurrection. And that sometimes the dead have to come back to life to protect the living. Rebecca thought she buried me forever. But forever is a long time. And I had a lot of digging to do. The case remains open in some ways because the police never found all the evidence of Rebecca's crimes. They never located the supplier who sold her the paralysis drug. They never identified the accomplices who helped her plan my fake death. And they never answered the biggest question of all. How many other people has Rebecca buried alive? Because someone who perfects a method like that, someone who knows exactly how much poison to use and exactly how to fake a death, doesn't learn those skills overnight. Somewhere out there might be other graves with other victims. Other families who never knew their loved ones were murdered. Other stories of people who weren't lucky enough to wake up in time. Justice was served for me and my father, but justice doesn't resurrect the dead who can't dig their way back up. And that's the most haunting truth of all. Some graves keep their secrets forever. But mine gave up its secret just in time. And now you know that death isn't always the end. Sometimes it's just the beginning of the most terrifying story you'll ever live to tell.